Welcome to the Full 10 Yards Power Rankings podcast with Josh Henwood and your host Liam Horsley.
Hello and welcome to the Full 10 Yards Power Rankings podcast. I'm your host Liam and I'm joined as always by the king of our Power Rankings. It is Josh Henwood. Josh, mate, how you doing before your nice 2-week holiday?
Yeah, I'm good, mate. The hours are counting down, but I couldn't get away from doing this one before leaving you in the ether of a power rankingless full 10 yards for a couple of weeks. How will the league survive?
I know. I don't know how I'm going to cope without without our chats and your rankings. We'll see how it goes. And you're going to miss. I don't know if you're going to watch them or not. But you're going to miss a couple of Browns games as well. So how are you going to cope without the hurt of the Browns?
Well, I should be in Italy on both of those Sundays. So by hope, I'll at least be able to download the game in 40, and then whilst the missus is asleep, I'll just be watching the game in 40 as without any idea, of course, of the scores. So hopefully there'll still be some mystique there. It's Ravens week. I can't miss Ravens game. That's unheard of.
True. Big week. And it was a big week 5 of the NFL. We're going to talk about your power rankings, mate. Usually we always start with just the top 5, but this week let's mix it up a little bit and start with the biggest movers and shakers. Ironically, we'll start at 5 though, because your biggest mover up or down is up 8 places, and that is the Dallas Cowboys breaking the top 5. What are your thoughts on obviously their performance against the Rams, and do you think they can stick around in this sort of area the way they're playing?
Yeah, so I think the main theme of this week is teams I'm finally believing in and giving them their props. Dallas definitely falls into that. I think that the brand of the Cowboys in terms of their squad is what kept them down for a while, and obviously Cooper Rush being unproven entity, the offense seemed stale with Dak Prescott in there week 1, so it took a long time to buy in. You keep telling yourself it's just the defense, it will eventually fall flat. They've won some impressive games, and they've won them impressively on both sides of the ball. You know, this is a good team. I don't even know if you take Cooper Rush out of the team at the moment. I know that there's talks about that on US national television now, because there's a hot hand at the moment. And Dallas is moving in a very positive direction. And let's say Dak comes in and he does perform better than what Rush is doing at the moment with this offense firing the way that it is. They're a top 5 side. You know, there's no getting around it. All of a sudden, and this seems to have been done quietly, Dallas are a team that you don't want to face on your schedule.
Yeah, I completely agree. They're one of the best teams in football. I think they've got the big game, haven't they, this week against the Eagles on Sunday Night Football, straight after Bills Chiefs, so that'll be fun. And then they follow that up with Lions and Bears. So,
Liam, give us a flavour. Obviously, you do your picks. Dallas, Philly. Which way have you gone?
I'll pick Dallas if Dak plays. If Dak's not going to play, I'll pick Philly. I'm not Cooper Rush.
You see, I've gone Dallas regardless.
Yeah.
I actually
they could definitely do it, but
I think that this is going to be one of those sneaky games where everyone's riding on Philly, but Dallas ends up pulling it out the way they have these other ones. I think that could cause some commotion this weekend.
Yeah, that would change some worldwide power rankings if Philly actually lose to the Cowboys and they both sit there at, what would that be, 5 and they'd both be 5-1 then, wouldn't they?
5-1, yeah.
Yeah. I'm not sure. Cooper Rush, I think, had 10 passes completed in this game, so I'm not quite riding on the offense. But I think if that comes back, you could see them creep up this list into that top 4 as well, just because I think they can be so
and maybe
good
passing isn't the option anyway in this game. You know, Philly have been proven to be a much better passing defense and rushing defense. It might well be that that's the way to go with it. In which case, you know, how about them Cowboys?
Yeah, exactly. And we'll see. I think Cardinals did okay against them this week, so the Cowboys might be okay. Kind of, I guess it correlates to this game then whilst we're talking about it. There's other big movers that we'll talk about, but the Rams dropped 4 places after losing this game. The offense looked as bad as it did before. I know you're not a big believer at the moment in the Rams offense. It's kind of Cooper Kupp, Tyler Higbee-ish or nothing. Run game still looks pretty bad. And I actually think the defense, the run game also looks pretty bad in this game. So what are your thoughts on the Rams? Is this the right area now? We've kind of settled in that they're not a top 10, top 6, 17?
Yeah, I mean, you were beating the drum a little bit last week, weren't you? Saying that this could well be where we start to see the Rams as a pretender, and that game definitely proved it. They can't get anything going on offense, like you said. They're getting bullied on defense. That offensive line has been an issue all year, and you definitely need a good offensive line to win games. In the way in which the Rams like to win games on offense. Their running game is practically non-existent. Realistically, like you said, there's 2 playmakers maybe that are actually doing anything for the Rams right now. It's just not working. And, when you consider the teams that have been around 9, 10, 11 this year, they fit that mold at the moment, of which is why they've ended up falling the way of which they have. There might have been earlier weeks where if they'd faced a loss like this, it wouldn't have hit them this much, but it's too many strikes now. But even then, though, top 10 still means that they're a really good side, very likely playoff caliber. It's just that they are not in that elite pack now. You can expect them to lose against the good teams.
Yeah, and I think they've got 49ers and the Buccaneers back-to-back in 2 and 3 weeks' time. So that'll be a big one for them to see if they can improve.
Nice one for me to prove it there.
Yeah, and they got Panthers next week, so I don't think whatever happens in that... Well, if they lose to the Panthers, then the rankings will change, but I don't think any win will change them much from 10th, no. But we'll see how those 2 games go. A little stat for them as well, 23% of their offensive drives have ended in turnover this season so far, a few turnover on downs. So yeah, Stafford leading the league in interceptions and pick sixes like he did last season as well. So yeah, strange season so far for the Rams. We'll see if they sign.
Strange season for the NFL. Realistically, any good team at the moment that isn't like 1 or 2 is prone to some really shocking and rather like industry-altering stats. It's weird. Yeah,
most of the top 10 have had a relatively bad loss as well. Let's look at the other big movers then. Someone that was firmly in your top 10, maybe even in your top 5 actually last week. The Dolphins have dropped down as the biggest loser, 7 places this week. They're at number 11. Very strange weekend for them with the new concussion rules, ironically impacting their quarterback before it impacted anyone else. Obviously, Skylar Thompson comes in, 25-year-old rookie, wasn't good in college. Wasn't good on Sunday. I thought the Jets did look good, but what are your thoughts on where the Dolphins sit? Are they in kind of QB purgatory now?
They're in QB purgatory, which definitely doesn't help. And then you wonder as to just how much they can get back. But the issue here is also on the defense, just because of the fact that you conceded 40 points to the Jets. I don't care who you've got at QB. This Miami defense is supposed to be, one of the top ones around. And obviously they were not put into great positions because of obviously the quarterback play, etc. But, you're playing the Jets, you find a way, you get your gadget players in, and it was a mess from top to bottom. It shows that they don't have too much of an idea outside of their main system, and by the looks of it, they're just going to be hit really massively by the injury stick this year. There's usually one team. It looks like it's going to be the Dolphins. It's unfortunate for them, really. They've got good games on the schedule, to come back from this on. And, make it seem like this was more of a, just a go with the flow rather than anything else. But warning signs conceding 40 at the Jets, you wonder whether or not others will be able to do the same simply because of the fact that they can't get into good positions because of the offense.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the run game is a bit of an odd one for me. I think Chase Edmonds got a relatively big deal, didn't he? I think he's like the 5th highest paid or cap hit running back this year. And he has a lot less touches than most at the moment. And I just don't think they haven't quite worked out who the guy is, who's going to get them going. And when the QB position is an issue, you need to at least be able to run the ball on some drives. And I think at the moment, for me, the run game, when your head coach is a run game coordinator historically, I think they need to improve that area, especially if the QB position is going to be a bit of a nightmare for them.
Yeah, agreed. Definitely.
And they got the Vikings this week, so that'll be an interesting game. Two teams that I have very similar in how good I think they are, but we'll see.
That's all right. And turns out that I have as well with 11 and 13. Not bad at all.
Exactly, yeah. We'll see who the quarterback is. If it's Skylar, then I don't think they'll be playing like an 11 team. We'll see.
Skylar versus Kirk.
Team Kirk. As anyone listens to the betting podcast knows, I'm Team Kirk for my sins, unfortunately. Go down one place then to 12th. You've got Green Bay. They're down 5 spots. Obviously, Dolphins down 7, so a little bit more of a faller. London game pitched as the biggest game in London. I think it probably was in terms of fanfare. I actually thought it was quite an entertaining game, more for how Saquon Barkley and the Giants coaching staff coached the game. But what were your thoughts on how Green Bay looked in Tottenham?
Yeah, I'll tell you what. Let's take both of these, shall we? Both Green Bay and New York, because New York were also a massive riser as well. I've put them up 7 spots, almost to placate the fact that they are at least semi-real. You know, they're 4-1. You don't get 4-1 by accident if you're a poor team on paper. So Green Bay, I really want them to, whenever they come out of the tunnel at Lambeau, just have Foo Fighters, The Pretender on, because they are not a good football team by the looks of it. They seem to be able to beat mediocre sides or sides that are a little damaged, but they themselves are damaged. On offense, they don't have answers. Aaron Rodgers cannot elevate this young offense. He can't get much going. I had no confidence that Green Bay were going to go down the field and score to take the win. We were talking at the time because I'd actually had Green Bay as the never bet the early kickoff, folks. Bet responsibly. Start your betting at 6 p.m. Sunday, right? Never go for the early kickoff, because this is a stereotypical Celtic drawing at St. Mirren type of situation. Green Bay did not look like they were going to win, and it showed. New York are not a great shakes team. They've got some good talent players, sort of dotted around, and you can tell that the rebuild is starting to take shape. Daniel Jones had a good day relatively, but we're talking relatively in a league full of poor QB play at the moment as well. What they've done well is being able to play situational football, game manager style football, and they've been able to get wins out of it. The question I have about the Giants, and this is why I only have them at 17, is Saquon Barkley is not exactly an injury-free player. And he is New York Giants football at the moment. There is not much outside of Saquon, but realistically, I could have just put Saquon Barkley's face at 17 there, and it would probably have just rang true, right? Everything's run through him. If he is taken out the game by scheme, by injury, by just triple covering him, whatever, do the Giants fall flat? I have that question currently, but they are a middle of the road team now, where I would expect them to at least engage with teams in the middle of the pack.
Yeah, I think you can't say much more than how good the coaching staff have done there. It was kind of known in the offseason that out of all the new head coaches, that Brian Daboll put a good coaching staff together. Obviously, Wink Martindale's won a lot of games. Tends to get a lot out of his defenses for like 2 or 3 years before things start to go a bit wrong. Obviously, Mike Kafka came from the Chiefs, who everyone in Kansas City absolutely loves. And it does seem like their coaching staff are just really good. And when you watch this year's NFL and you see how many teams make coaching mistakes, including my team, for example, and obviously the Chargers, it seems to happen regularly. Obviously, we'll talk about Denver in a minute. It happens at every down for Denver. But the Giants don't do that. They've got a well-coached team that seem like the players want to play for them. They've got the Ravens this week that Sky decided not to put on at 6 p.m., followed by the Jags, Seahawks, Texans, and Lions. So this could be a team that wins, 6-7 games by the time we get to week 11, and everyone's kind of win total bets on the Giants. If you bet under, are just getting absolutely destroyed, aren't they?
Yeah, pretty much.
But yeah, we'll see. They got a lot of players to come back in the wide receiver room, so maybe Saquon won't have to be as important. Let's flip to that team I just mentioned then, Denver, down 6 places. You have them here at 22. I think this is about right, to be honest. We did mention last week that I thought they might be a little bit too high. They had that crushing loss. We had Russell Wilson missing a wide open receiver on 4th down in the end zone. Then we had him go to the podium and whisper, "Let's ride," to the nation, which everyone hated. So where are you sat with Denver now? Are they just a bad football team, or do you think there's hope that if they improve the coaching a little bit, Russ maybe improves his performance a bit in the scheme, they could improve, or are they going to be this sort of area, you think, for the rest of the season?
I think that I don't see them getting out of this slide, between 11 and 24. That's certainly for sure. Do I see them getting out of the right-hand side of this graphic where it's 18 to 24? Maybe, but I think that a lot of it actually depends on Russell Wilson. Because this is not a surprise for critics of Russell Wilson, of which I consider myself one of them. I make no bones about the fact that I thought that the trade deal to bring Wilson along was way overpaid. I actually think it was the silent, the one which was brushed under the carpet the most, in terms of how bad this deal actually looked. And Seattle's showing you that now, where Geno Smith is taking a team that is, on paper worse in Seattle in terms of the offense, and he's, creating a goldmine out of it, whereas Russell Wilson was practically leading to its stagnation. And he seems to be doing the exact same here in Denver. Teddy Bridgewater looked better in Denver compared to Russell Wilson. And this is not a case of, the odd coaching step. It's not a case of organization. It's a case of the fact that Russell Wilson just does not seem to have it at the moment. And he has been on a general decline for probably about 3 years. So, yeah, that to me seems to be everything about the fact that he couldn't hit probably the simplest looking slant on that game-winning drive against the Colts. Not to mention all the other missteps of which he made along the way. I think Denver are one of the lowest scoring offenses at the moment, aren't they? I think they've scored something like, I want to say 15 points a game, something like that. That's with Russell Wilson.
Yeah, second lowest scoring points per game now in the NFL. They are with the 200 and what is it, $246 million quarterback, I think it is. And not great
and look
weapons,
at Denver's,
but good
look
weapons.
but good weapons. I think isn't KJ Hamler their number 3 wide receiver?
Yeah, 3 or 4. Yeah, depending on how you look at it. So
there you go. KJ Hamler having you as 3 or 4 wide receiver. I'm sorry, they've got one of the best weapon rooms in the league, really, when you look outside the top 6, 7. So, unfortunately, I'd probably say their weapons room, if you take out Travis Kelce at the Chiefs, I'd say that it supersedes the Chiefs in terms of the weapons room, just on paper. So when you've got that and a quarterback like Russell Wilson, and Russell Wilson ain't doing the job, I think Hackett is taking a hell of a lot of the flack at the moment for a very underperforming psychopath by the name of Russell Wilson. And yes, the psychopath element is just because of his flipping ad campaign, which I still can't get past. If you haven't, if you've not watched the Danger Witch advert yet, for anyone who's listening or watching, I beg you to go and watch it. It is quite possibly the most surreal 15-20 seconds of advertising ever. And to whoever has put that ominous music behind it to make it look like he's a serial killer, chef's kiss, because that is exactly what it's like. And, he is for real murdering this Denver team.
Yeah, he is. I am a little bit still on the side of the coach is just terrible. But my worry with him is as well, he's an offensive mind. He's not a defensive mind. And for the offense to be as bad as it is.
Oh, yeah, it definitely doesn't help. But then you've got to also look at Wilson's experience as well. Tom Brady could probably, go in there, disregard the coach entirely, run his own scheme pretty much, and do what needs to be done. Just audible at the line and do whatever. Russell Wilson seems to be happy to just hide behind everyone and just act incredibly over entitled at the press conferences thereafter.
Yeah, and they've got the Chargers this week on Monday Night Football, so we get our fourth Denver primetime game in 6 weeks.
I
Which
think
is
it
not great for us.
subsides over the season. I think that they
It
have
does.
practically none in the second half of the year, but they are very much the 2019 Cleveland Browns in terms of the way in which they've been marketed. Because if you remember is it 2019 or 2020? When there was a
2020.
hell of a lot of 2020 Browns, where that's right. It's a Freddie Kitchen year. They had about 5 primetime games in the first half of the season, and then it's not as if they could change it up anyway, but it's almost as if the league realized that they were terrible and then didn't show them again until like week 16. So that seems to be what's happening with Denver here, almost a like for like.
Yeah, but I don't think Denver have won, I think, against the Chiefs in the second half of the season, and that's it. So yeah, I think they've wised up, but we'll see. They haven't got a bye week until the start of November, where often teams obviously can make tweaks in the bye week. So we'll see how Denver look for the next few weeks. 2 other teams that have moved down then that I want to lump together. I'll call them. I actually am really high on one of these teams, but I will call them, and you know where this is going. I'll call them the media darlings of the season so far. The Jacksonville Jaguars are down 4 places, down to 19. The 1 and 4, it's probably the highest 1 and 4 team you'll see. That 1 and 4 Detroit Lions are down 3 places, but still at 24. Which one of these 2 teams most disappointed you this week?
The Jags. Like, for all the flack that I've had for not having the Jags higher, I finally put the Jags up. Well, not just from you, from anyone that deigns to look at my power rankings. They're like, you're still not high on the Jags, and then all of a sudden you lose to the Houston Texans in the manner of which you did. I mean, they didn't even score a touchdown, did they, against the Houston Texans? And that's the Houston goddamn Texans. I'm surprised I stopped at 19. I'm really surprised I stopped at 19. They could have free fallen. I think that it was just professional curiosity that stopped me from going further. Oh, and in terms of Detroit, sorry, I realized it was a double-ended question now. 1 and 4 team that's incredibly spicy. I mean, I look at those below. I think that Detroit could take on any of those, on their day. I think I might have potentially Seattle too low. Realistically, I could probably have switched Seattle and Detroit. But I have more faith in Detroit's offense than I do than I probably should, really. I think it's probably a case. Yeah, exactly. So I'm kind of giving them a bit of leeway at the moment, but yeah, it could well even be the media thing that's stopping me from making them slide too far down. They might deserve to be in that final tier, but not just yet. I'm choosing to believe for one more week.
Yeah, and that's after a 29-0 defeat for the Patriots. To the Patriots. Saw the Patriots move up 1 spot in your ranks as well. And the Lions have a bye week this week, followed by Cowboys, probably with Dak Prescott, Dolphins, and Packers. So we could be looking at a 1 and 7 team going into Chicago to play the Bears, which obviously they'll probably be favourite. But I do think the way they've started, and I like Dan Campbell as well, and how much people talk about Dan Campbell, this could be a bit of a strange season that maybe he could lose his job. Because I do think if you go 1 and 7, 1 and 6, and then you've got games against the Bills, Vikings to come after that, it could be a pretty bad year for Detroit, I think, even though they score loads of points. But unfortunately, that defense just gives up too many, doesn't it?
Yeah, but realistically, it could end up being a good thing for Detroit. It's not like they were going to the playoffs anyway.
Yeah.
So
good for the franchise.
Exactly. And also, it's not terrible for the fans either. As long as you're competitive and you're showing signs of progress, there's a difference.
Yeah, agree. Cool. Let's move back to the top end then. One of the other big movers. I'll read out 1 through 10 and then talk about the team that's moved quite high in that top 10 that I think are a really good team. So you've still got the Bills, Eagles, and Chiefs as your 1, 2, 3. Ravens up 1 spot at 4. Like we said earlier, Cowboys up 8 spots at 5. The San Francisco 49ers up 5 spots to number 6. Tampa are up 1 spot to number 7. Chargers are up after beating your team 1 spot to number 8. Bengals are at one spot as well to number 9. And we spoke about the Rams who've fallen to 10. So the only other team I want to talk about in the top 10 is actually San Francisco, up 5 places. Got some really interesting games coming up. Had a very easy game this weekend, but took it pretty well, I would say, especially on offensive, how well they played. And there's a lot of big teams that are losing to teams they shouldn't this season. San Francisco managed to find a way. So what are your thoughts on how they look this weekend, and what kind of made you move them up these spots?
Partially, it was because of the manner in which they were able to take this win. It was incredibly dominant. I think that they've the games of which they've had so far has also shown me that it's not a fluke either. They've seemed to have a solid base. They have a really good defense. Their attack is consistent. It doesn't have. It doesn't turn the ball over easily. It executes, it gets the job done. And if you can put that on a solid defense, then you're going to end up getting good results. And that's what the 49ers are about. They're not flashy. They're not going to tear you apart limb from limb. But what they are going to do is they're going to strangle you over the course of 60 minutes and be able to get out of Dodge. So, that those sort of teams don't usually get the love of which they sometimes deserve. I felt like now was finally the time, especially when you look at the teams of which they've leapfrogged. The Rams can't really do much at the moment. The Bengals seem cauterized. The Chargers were Brandon Staley kind of shot them in the foot, but realistically, the Browns should have beaten them. These are teams of which have benefited from the Rams being as bad as they are, rather than them being good this week. The Bucks, again, see the other two as well. So I'd say that they're in about the right position, but 6 to 10 can, that's still going to be quite volatile. I just don't see any of these actually getting into the top 5 unless Dallas do something incredibly stupid.
Can all 6 through 10 teams win a Super Bowl? If the playoffs started next week and they were on the playoffs, could they all win the Super Bowl, or would you be worried that a couple of them aren't good enough at the moment?
I guess they all could. Do I see any of them beating Buffalo or the Eagles at the moment? San Francisco could probably beat the Eagles to get through into the Super Bowl. As to whether or not they could beat the Bills, probably not.
I think I reckon they beat the Bills.
Put it this way, I think that the NFC teams could get into the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
I think the AFC teams would fall short against either the Chiefs or Bills. The Chargers would be my outlier if everyone got healthy.
Yeah, you probably have to beat the Chiefs and Bills for the AFC, yes, which is the difficult part. Even if you're not high on the Chiefs, or you think the Bills are overrated, you have to beat both of them.
It's a tough road. The AFC is a much tougher road, even with the NFC East being what it's becoming. It's still very, very tough if you're in the AFC.
Yeah, I think if we had an NFC Championship game next week, I would probably pick the 49ers to maybe win a one-off game, even if I don't think they're quite as good as the Eagles. We'll see. They got the Falcons this week, a game they should win. And then they have the Chiefs, Rams, and Chargers as their next 3 games. So we'll see if I think they're a legit team anyway, but we'll see how legit they are once you see Jimmy G against those 3 teams, and if he can keep up scoring with 2 great quarterbacks and Stafford, who can be great if he sorts himself out a little bit. We'll see.
Yeah.
Cool. And then moving back to the other end, I spoke about quite heavily in the last 2 podcasts that I felt the bottom 4 was a tier within itself. And there's been a bit of movement in there. So you've got Washington still at 32, the Panthers at 31, down 2 spots, the Bears at 30, and then the Texans, who obviously won that game, managed to scrape up 2 spots. However, I think this could be a bottom 5 tier now. And this won't harm you as a Browns fan for me to say this. I think the Steelers, who you've got at 28 now, which obviously are in that 5th from bottom spot, I think that might be a tier within itself of how well the 3 teams above are actually being coached as well, on offense at least. What are your thoughts on how bad the Steelers looked? In a game we all knew they'd lose, but I think it's the manner of it now.
Yeah, I'm choosing to give them a mulligan because the Bills do tend to destroy teams when they win. And also, the 2 of those touchdowns were insanity plays, right? So we can probably dust off just how massive the victory was, but the Steelers do look rather impotent. I don't think Kenny Pickett looked particularly terrible, but the Steelers' defense is not feared anymore. Their offense is, it's either young and late or they're starting to tear each other apart. This is, for the Steelers, this is the end of an era, not because it's Big Ben, but because they are having to actually rebuild at long last. We've not seen a bona fide Steelers rebuild rather than retool probably in our lifetime. So this is interesting waters. I think that the Steelers will end up being the safe keeper of the bottom tier. I've put them to the left-hand side of this graphic, of which shows a 4-4 for anyone that's listening to this on Audible only. I've got 25 to 28 on one side and 29 to 32 on another. I've got the Steelers kind of almost protecting the bottom four from moving up any further. And I think that's probably the way which it's going to play out. They're almost like a bottom tier A and the rest of bottom tier B, if you want to play it that way. But no, the Jets, the Seahawks, the Falcons, they're probably they're fixing to get out of this bottom slide, and one or two of them could do it. There are some frisky players there.
Yeah, definitely, especially with how bad Detroit and Denver, who are slightly above them, are looking at the moment. I completely agree, and I still think the Colts and Saints maybe could slide depending on schedules. They've both got hard games coming up, but I think for me, Geno's playing well for the Seahawks, like really, really well. He isn't a top 10 quarterback, but his statistical performances from an analytics point of view, and just if you count stats on the stat sheet, he is playing like a top 10 quarterback. Some of that's because some of the other veterans are playing poorly this year. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady not playing to himself. Russell Wilson's not playing to himself. Derek Carr has just terrible quarters this year. But I do think that he's playing like a top 10, 12 sort of quarterback, even if he isn't one by nature. And I do also think that the Jets are playing really, really well. And at the moment, the way their offense looks, anyone could play quarterback for the Jets, and they're probably going to be able to put up 20, 25 points and give teams a game at the moment.
Yep, absolutely agreed. It's an odd time. Like I said last week, I think it was, the middle is so large, so varied, and so unpredictable that these games are not a foregone conclusion anymore.
No, I agree. A couple of spots else I like. We've spoken about the Bucks at 7. I think that's fair for them. Spoken about Denver being dropped. Definitely spoken about Miami being dropped as well, which I agree with. But I actually quite like the fact the Titans are now in that top 15 range at 14, top of the AFC South again, where they seem to always be. Definitely a weaker team than the last 3 seasons, but very able managers to win games. And I think having them at 14 might even be a little bit of a tier breaker to me after you get past them at 14. But they've impressed me.
Maybe the Raiders as well. Maybe the Raiders just about sneak in underneath that tier break as well. I thought it was a really close game against the Chiefs the other night as well, so might just be able to put in that breaker at 15.
Yeah, they need to win some. They need to win some games, and they might have to do it without Devontae Adams this week. We shall see. Are there any other teams you wanted to call out before we head off?
Just taking a look here and thinking that realistically, no, because a lot of them was more about movement than anything else, and adjusting for the fact that some were falling into a new position. I know that you spoke about the Browns being almost like a prime meridian last week, and that has now shifted to about 18, of which, there were 19 last week, 18 this week. That they will end up sitting around there for a long time to come, I think, simply because they refuse to get out of their own way. But they're a team that could beat anybody from like 6th through to 32, but they could also lose to literally anybody. So
and they've got a really hard schedule coming up.
They have, yes, they've got. I think it's the most difficult schedule remaining in the league now. Now the Steelers have played the Bills, so it's not looking good for them. But They have only lost by a total of 6 points this season. Like all of their losses have amounted to 6 points, and that's included the game against Chargers now. So upstarts, but also just, really tempered on them. But 18 is about the right spot. The Colts feel like a very Browns team to me as well. That's why they're around there as well. Anything in around 16 to 21, 23, maybe even. I kind of like the teams that can punch you in the mouth, but are unlikely to actually sustain for a full 12-round fight.
Yeah, and there's some very, very big NFL teams in that batch as well, which is the interesting thing. And we're going to see a lot of them on primetime just because of how the logos and the badges of those teams. But yeah, I think I'm with you on the Browns. They should beat the Patriots this week for me, but they could easily lose. Like you said, I feel like that with every Browns game at the moment. And the Colts, I feel almost the same at that. Against an average team, they could win by 2 scores. But against a bad team, they could also lose by a score. So I do feel like those two teams are almost similar, but obviously one's going to have a better quarterback on the field that can eventually come back. So we'll see how that goes.
Exactly. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Perfect. I think that's us for this week. Remember to follow Josh at jhenwood92. Follow me at _Liam Horsley. Follow us at full 10 yards as well. Enjoy your holiday, mate. We're going to miss these chats, but I'm sure in 3 weeks' time we'll be back debating some crazy movements after a bit of a break.
I was going to say, do we get to see a double-digit movement? That's going to be the that's going to be the key. That's going to be the
someone
first
moves
discussion,
10
I'm
spots.
Pretty sure.
That'll be interesting. We'll see who that is.
This is me staking my reputation now, isn't it? I should have done some. I should have done some hedging. Oh well.
The Browns will be number 8 when we come back. We shall see.
Ooh,
but yeah, thanks for listening,
that'd
guys.
That'd be nice.
We will speak to you soon.
Thank you, everyone. Take care. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Full 10 Yards Power Rankings podcast with Josh Henwood and Liam Horsley. Don't forget to subscribe to the Full 10 Yards podcasts and follow us on Twitter at Full 10 Yards.